Hi, I'm Adrienne Conroy. I portray a camp follower for Bell's Company of Maryland Forces. There were a few women, mostly wives or mothers of soldiers, that would follow the Army and perform work for the soldiers, usually officers, in exchange for a ration of food. Food preservation for the winter was a very important thing for the soldiers and the camp follower women because you only got what the supply train brought with you. And the men would receive 1 pound of meat and 1 pound of bread or flour or rice sometimes, or sometimes peas. And the women would receive half that ration. Children would receive a quarter. So finding and preserving food was very important because the food was not sufficient to meet the calorie needs of especially the soldiers when they were fighting. So camp follower women would forage in the woods for any foods that they could find, mushrooms, blueberries. They had to forage for the mushrooms very carefully because there are a lot of mushrooms that are toxic and will make you very, very sick. And a lot of mushrooms that are toxic look a lot like mushrooms that are safe to eat. So you have to learn from someone who already knows which types of mushrooms are safe to eat, how to identify them, where to find them, when to find them, and when to find the mushrooms that are toxic and you need to leave it alone. Root vegetables were important to the diets of the soldiers and the camp followers because they kept for long periods of time. You could take a large barrel, put in sawdust, put in a layer of potatoes so they're not touching each other. And you can also do this with apples. And then you cover it with sawdust, more food, more sawdust, more food. And then the food would keep for a long period of time. So in the wintertime, when there was no food to be had out on the ground, you would still have your onions, your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, and you could make food. Soldiers and the camp followers would fish in a river, stream, or lake, if they were anywhere near where they could fish. And then the fish were dried and smoked to save for later because fish doesn't last long. So it had to be preserved for later. They could possibly buy produce if they were close enough to a city or if they were close enough to a farm. They could buy things from the farmers or glean from an abandoned farm because a lot of the farmers abandoned their farms and went back to the cities and forts as refugees. This is the blueberries. Blueberries are native to the United States and they grow around most places in the woods in abundance, and they don't fruit for very long. So while they're fruiting, men, women, and children would go out into the woods and pick as many blueberries as they possibly could. Then they could lay them out on a sheet on the ground to dry in the sun so they would last all winter. And you can eat them dry, you can stew them, you can cook them in a pie, you put some liquid in the pie and so the fruit becomes soft. Or you can just eat them dry right out of your hand like we do today. So bringing history to life makes it really that much more interesting for kids and families. I've heard people say, oh, I went to this place, I went to Mount Vernon and I saw the people and I saw the soldiers marching and I was like 5 years old and I remembered it my whole life.